YouTube is such a mental game, and if you get carried away with those statistics, it hurts. I have random weeks where I just cannot think of an idea. There are always people that are really upset with what I have to say and throw in some nasty comments. This is just a general rule of thumb for like every YouTuber, and I've seen it for like all the successful ones as well. You just need to stay evolving your content.
I'm Brian McDonough, and you are watching the first ever episode of the Soccer Stories podcast. I'm glad you're here, and you should be too, because on this show, I promise to bring you the best and brightest minds in world football. And on today's episode, the first episode, we have just that. We have HRV Izak, a content creator who has exploded onto the scene with over 130,000 subscribers on YouTube and climbing fast. This guy does it all, and he has a tireless work ethic. If you're a content creator, a football soccer fan, you're gonna really enjoy this episode, and I promise you, if you hit like and subscribe and follow us on this journey on this Soccer Stories podcast, I promise to bring you better guests week to week. That's part of the agreement here. So I don't know where you're watching from, but I hope you enjoy this episode. Izak, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
All right, let's start off with the first question. Walk me through your day-to-day. What is that like?
Well, it's definitely changed over time. I moved to Croatia a few months ago. Well, I say a few months. Now it's already been like 4. Actually, no, 5. Wow, time flies. But yeah, since I moved here, it's really been, I've obviously been mainly focusing on content throughout day to day. I go to the gym first thing in the morning usually. Make breakfast, and then most of the time just write scripts for shorts and stuff, and then record the rest of the day. And then following that, if I have time, edit. If I don't finish the edits, then push them to the next day. I basically try to fill in a 9 to 5 the best I can with my YouTube schedule, just to like try to be consistent. But obviously sometimes I get carried away, or there's like a task I have to do during the day. So then that day is prolonged, and I have to work after hours, obviously. But I mean, that's part of the fun. And it's nice to have that flexibility with this job, because I mean, the fact that I can work wherever and whenever is honestly such a pro. There's a lot to it, though. I mean, there's a lot of stuff behind the scenes that I guess people don't really take into consideration or really know what happens. So yeah, there's a lot behind that goes on, like thinking of fresh ideas. Editing takes a lot of time, always longer than I anticipated to. That's why sometimes I have to work after hours. But yeah, I mean, I moved to Croatia basically to be able to kind of have the year to explore, travel Europe a bit. Croatia is kind of like my base. I randomly take a trip after working a lot for a few weeks. I just go somewhere for a bit, sometimes even work there, depending on what my accommodation is. So yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about that. How sometimes things, you can't always control everything, right? Like just today, you're saying there's construction going on, and how does that throw off your schedule, right? I'm sure you have a plan every day. I'm not full time myself, but I have a plan of when I need to get stuff done. And a day like today, what does that do to your schedule? When do you make up for this?
Yeah. So perfect example was today. We scheduled to film this podcast, this episode. I don't know. Earlier we're on different time zones right now, but yeah, I had it scheduled so we would start afternoon my time, and we just had to push it because there was construction below me that was just making too much noise. So I basically had to push all of my recordings and kind of focus on other stuff. So today I was just really focusing on making scripts, maybe thumbnails and stuff like that I didn't have to rely on like a set recording or anything. So now that it's the end of the day, I have time for this, and I'm just kind of hoping that tomorrow the construction won't be too long. Now I'll have to maybe wake up earlier just to be safe before they start, and while there's still like a good sunlight out.
Yeah, and those are some of the day-to-day stuff that goes on with content creation. Now, like, you pump out videos nonstop. I'm amazed at like the rate of how quickly you publish videos on Instagram every day, the consistency. What goes into being consistent? Because I've tried to get in a cadence of posting on my channel on State of Soccer, like daily reels. I can't get past like 3 days in a row, 4 days in a row, but somehow every day, surefire, you have something. When do you plan that? When do you film them? Do you film it all in one setting? Can you walk us through that process?
It changes every week. I wish I could keep it like the same
And
routine
sorry,
as
where
every
do the
week.
topics come from? Like you always have great, fresh ideas.
Oh, thank you, thank you. It's hard to say. So, well, first of all, in terms of scheduling, like I try to write a bunch down and try to record as many as I can, like at the beginning of the week. My goal is always to have like a full week of recordings if I can. But, you know, a lot of the times it does fall short. So I'll end up only having like 3, and then I'll think of another idea middle of the week, record that. And definitely having an editor as well helps. I do edit about half of the reels and shorts that I put out, and the other half I give to somebody else who's been really helpful. Shout out to Finn Cross Football. He's been amazing in helping me stay consistent. Before I had him, I was also staying consistent, but if it weren't for him, I wouldn't have been able to make long videos.
Yeah.
Just focusing on shorts, doing those every day. If you're editing those as well, you'll basically have no time to do long format.
And that's my question too. Obviously you're monetized, right? You know, I monetized, but not at the scale you are. You know, you reached over the 100,000, subscriber platform or followers on YouTube. Reels don't generate as much revenue as the long form videos. So, and they take up a lot of time. But what's the benefit of Reels in your eyes for any content creators out there? Like, is it the growth of the subscriber base? What do you think?
Yeah. Reels definitely help you get a bigger audience. My biggest fear when I started doing Reels, because before I was always focusing on the long format, I only started doing Reels this year, like heavy based. I did a bit last year, but I wasn't consistent with them. But I noticed that the subscriber count, I mean, I started this year with 60K exactly. I remember on January 1st, I had 60,000. And now at the time of recording this, I have, I think, 130K. So it's over doubled in just less than a year. And it's all because of the shorts. It really just helps. I guess the algorithm for shorts just does wonders because people, I mean, I don't mean to, roast viewers, but that's just the game. Like people are just mindlessly scrolling and they come across your video. If it's a well-made video, then there's a better chance, or an interesting topic, I should say, there's a better chance that it pops into somebody's feed. Whereas like the long form videos, people have to go out of their way to click on it and it's harder to grab them. But my biggest fear transitioning to that was, how are people going to basically be still watching my long format videos? I was kind of afraid that I would kind of lose that viewership in a sense, but it's definitely not as high as the reels, of course. I'm not surprised, but I definitely did still notice an increase in the long video views as well.
Yeah, and I sometimes have the same concern too. I think that you have your long form video viewers you're following on your channel, which I've gone through your comments at times. It's extensive, right? People really do support your videos. They're fantastic. But do those same shorts viewers on YouTube watch your long form? I'd imagine maybe not. So how do you get those shorts viewers over to your long form videos? How do you entice them to view those videos?
There's not really a massive answer to that. I mean, the thing is, I'm sure we'll dive into this later a bit more, but with my long videos, I feel like I've also kind of lacked creativity, I guess, with them. I've always just been doing prediction videos now and nothing else, sometimes tier lists.
But they do well.
Vlogs.
They get a lot of views.
They do well, yeah. But that's the thing. I think it's because it's a topic that people are kind of interested in already. So maybe I've just gotten a bit more dedicated viewers from the shorts to transition to the long videos. But I definitely notice overall there are less in the long format. Like there's no dodging that, I think. Now, but the fact that I have a little bit more is definitely a boost. Yeah.
Let me ask you this, because it happens to me probably more often than it happens to you, but at a different scale. I've gone on a trip recently, went to Argentina, pumped out some nice match day vlogs. Some of them did really well. Some of them did absolutely abysmal. We're talking, 500-600 views, right? So it's awful in my world of YouTube. Your world, that might be 15,000, 20,000, 30,000. What does that feel like as a creator when you put your heart and soul into a video, you're really proud of it, You think it's good. In fact, it's at the quality of your previous videos, if not better, and then it flops. Describe to the viewers what that is like as a creator when you go through that process, and how do you come back from that?
Yeah, the thing is, YouTube is such a mental game, and if you get carried away with those statistics, it hurts. It hurts you mentally. It brings you down so fast. I've been there. I know of other creators have been there as well. But I think part of, accepting that you want to do this, if you do want to become a YouTuber, you just got to learn that it's bound to happen. It happens to everybody. It sucks when it's something that you worked hard on and you're proud of, but you just got to keep moving forward at the end of the day. And just because it didn't pan out your way, that doesn't mean it won't in the future. I remember you were actually sending me that Argentina vlog that you did when you went to was it the River Plate Boca Juniors match?
River Plate versus Estudiantes, but it was the clinching title of the Premier Division.
Okay, match. Yeah, sorry, I mixed up. Yeah, but I remember you sent me that video. It was really well done, and yeah, you weren't very happy with how it did. But then, literally 2 weeks later, it just blew up out of nowhere, and that's happened to me as well. So sometimes you just have to be patient. But if it doesn't turn out your way, just keep pushing forward. You basically learn every time you create. Mm-hmm. And you do improve. You learn what people like. You learn what people don't like. If you go to any YouTuber and you go to their first videos, they're very different from what they produce now, because it's a learning game. The more you produce, the more you create, the better you become, essentially.
And sometimes you even look back on old videos and go, okay, back then I was maybe more creative doing something different. Let's bring that back too. Like, I think you evolve. There's ebbs and flows of being a creator, I'd say, right? Like I think there's periods of time where you are super creative, and then you have droughts. It's like being a writer, or right?
Yeah, for sure. I have random weeks where I just cannot think of an idea, and I'm just sitting there and I feel like I've wasted a good chunk of the day only writing down like 1 or 2 shorts when I've wanted to write at least 6 down that day. It happens. It's tough.
Now let's talk about some of your ideas that you have, like best 11 Yugoslavia. I saw that, me particularly interested. Republic of Ireland. I think you did like a best 11 if all the players who technically could play for Ireland, Republic of Ireland, what that roster would look like shorts like that. And then I've seen other ones like smallest. I believe you might have done like smallest nations to ever win a World Cup. I may be misquoting, but yeah, shorts like that, reels like that. What are some of your favorite ones you've produced? And like, you have a particular interest in, Croatia. Well, you're living in Croatia right now, but like Serbia. Like, can you talk about that as well?
Yeah. So basically, whenever I think of an idea and it kind of like hits the jackpot, essentially, I try to continue that momentum and kind of like base more videos off of that idea. For example, you said the Yugoslavia combined 11. Then I did so many others. Czechoslovakia, former Soviet Union.
Yeah.
Best combined 11 of like the biggest transfers. You just keep feeding ideas. So sometimes it's nice to kind of have like that core and then just build from there. So I definitely love doing those combined 11 ones. It's been a while since I've done one, because at this moment I feel like I've done so many that I can't really think of any good ones.
Yeah. Did you do the Republic of Ireland one, or did I just make that up?
I didn't do the Republic of Ireland one. No.
You did something about this could be their golden age, didn't you?
Yes, I made a golden generation video. Yeah.
Or maybe the Republic of Ireland one could be a future episode.
Yeah. I mean, it's true. There's so many. I'm sure somebody else has done it as well. But yeah. There's just bouncing off of those ideas. Also, football facts that sound fake, or football records, stuff like that. People love that. I guess it's always interesting to kind of learn that information. Mm-hmm. And it's things that like throw you off that you wouldn't really think about. So yeah,
it's all interesting stuff, and it kind of like captivates people. I think like their imagination. And the thing is, a lot of this is historical, it's real, it's football history. Some of your reels, which make it really, really cool too. Let's talk about the move to Croatia. When we spent some time together at the World Cup last year, you were talking about it. You made it happen. Where did this journey begin, right? Like, walk me through, like, when did the whole idea of going to Croatia begin? And talk a little bit about your travel since you've been over there.
So I've had this YouTube channel for a long time, but I never really started taking it seriously and until like for the past 2 years, maybe.
Yeah.
So I was always, I always had in my head that I wanted to live abroad for a bit, just like at least a year. And I have so much family already in Croatia. I've been to Zagreb so many times growing up. So I just thought this was the perfect spot. And the fact that I was able to take my channel to where it is today, I was like, you know what? This is the perfect opportunity to try this out. Now that I'm working online, essentially, this is the time to give it a go. And yeah, I always had this in the back of my head. I wanted to do this since I was in university, to live in a country for a year, but I had to worry about finishing university first. Then I finished university, but I wasn't like financially set to
Sure.
basically make a move like that. So I waited for another year. I worked at a news station as well as soon as I graduated editing for them. When I lived in Florida for a year with my friend doing that. But during that year, I really started to take the channel seriously. I didn't have as many friends in Florida, obviously, so that's when I like really started to focus on making videos and just pumping them out. And that's when all like the World Cup hype began and when the group draw was announced and all that. So I was working at this news station and I was actually still doing random edits during the job because basically my shifts were so out of the blue. They were from on the weekends 2 a.m. to 10 a.m. And
Okay. Yeah.
the first half of the shift, basically from 2 to not first half, like first 3/4 of the shift, like 2 to 6 or 2 to 7 a.m., I had to just edit a bunch of news content. But then the last 3 hours, I would just kind of sit there and they'd ask me to like do random things, but I just had to like make sure that everything was okay, like with the show as it was rolling.
Sure.
But I just brought my laptop and I started editing my YouTube videos during my shift.
So it was almost like the sooner you got the news station's videos done, you could turn to your own passion, your real
Exactly. So
Yeah.
that those last 3 hours, I was just doing my own thing, and it was nice because it sucked being up that early, but it was nice to be able to focus on my own craft. And then it got to the point where I didn't even work for them for that long, to be honest. But it got to the point where I was like, yeah, I want to go all out with YouTube. So I wasn't like fully, set financially there yet, but I was like, you know what, let's just go all out. So I quit and then I just focused on YouTube. The World Cup groups were announced and it just kept rolling from there.
So I'd imagine whenever you have like a dry spell of ideas or you're questioning everyone, no matter what you do, you can be the world's best footballer. Does this really make me happy? Am I fulfilled? It doesn't matter, right? Like we all have those dialogues in our head, I imagine. But I'm sure you can always think back to that news job and, say like, okay, this is what I did in my free time. This is what I'm truly passionate about.
Yeah. I mean, it was definitely somewhat of a stepping stone. It made me realize even more that I wanted to make YouTube happen in a sense. Because, I mean, there's loads of editing jobs, of course. And I do enjoy editing, but that in specific, like news content, it's much more dry, I guess. You can't be creative with it. I mean, you've seen the news. It's like,
yeah,
they show the clips. That's it. All the content's just like, you're putting together really fast and rushed to get it out ASAP. That's what it is. So it made me realize even more that it was a cool experience. I definitely do not regret doing it. It was really interesting to see how that works, but it also made me realize that's not what I want to be doing.
It's a grind. I think following the news cycle, I'm always impressed with people who can do it on Twitter or if people just coming out with daily content. It's creating evergreen content, especially when you have less time or when you're trying to do multiple different types of content can be the way to go because following the news cycle is tiring and it's on to the next one. You produce something good and then it hits or it doesn't and it's on to the next one, on to the next one. Now, you talked about the World Cup. If I recall, you went to Russia 18. You obviously were in Qatar. I don't know if you were in Brazil. Did you?
No, Russia was my first one.
And me too. We didn't meet there, but we met in Qatar. Talk about the World Cup video. So what did you mean by that? Like, is that your first video that really hit?
Yeah, actually. So I quit the news job at this point, and I remember streaming the draw for the 2022 World Cup groups, and that was my best stream by far. It just blew up. Um, I had like thousands of views at once, and by the end, it had over 100,000 views, which was mind blowing to
At
me.
this point, were you monetized, or were you just kind of doing this?
I was monetized, but this was still like it was before that point where it was like decent, like livable wages.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So yeah, that draw happened, and as soon as it finished, I was like, all right, I need to make a prediction about this World Cup group ASAP. I'm I'm gonna record this immediately and just edit all night. I don't care. And that's exactly what I did. Record it. I like took a 2 hour break after the stream, but then I recorded it and stayed up all night editing it. I went to bed at 7 a.m. that night. But in my head, I was like, I need to be the first person to upload a prediction video. And I was like, I'm taking the risk. We'll see if it pays off. I don't know. But that was my biggest like subscriber jump in one day. I remember I gained thousands of subs, and I went to bed at 7 a.m., uploaded the video, and I woke up like 4 hours later, obviously, because like my sleep schedule was all over the place. And I already had like 80,000 views, which was like nuts to me.
Yeah, it's one of the best feelings of a creator when you go to sleep. It's happened to me a couple times. I'm sure not as often as you, but you go to sleep, you wake up the next morning, and you have thousands of views flooding and tons of comments and people saying like, you did a good job, or I really enjoyed this, or even if they're saying bad things, they're responding, or things you don't like. It's engagement that kind of keeps you going, right?
Yeah.
Talk about the journey with some of your followers, with your subscribers, with some of your fans and the comments you get. Are there certain people, and you don't really necessarily need to shout them out, but are there certain people who just always are there for you in the comment section?
Yeah, no, I definitely notice certain people like that always just pop in, give their thoughts. And I've even noticed some that have been there for ages. And I was lucky to even meet a few, actually. I remember I met one at the World Cup. He was a really nice guy. But yeah, definitely it's nice to always get those nice comments, because especially with the prediction videos, I mean, my predictions aren't obviously that great. I just do them mostly for fun, but people get heated if I say their team isn't going to win and take it the wrong way always, even though I try to be like as polite as possible. So I always get a few, I should say more than a few, especially during that World Cup video that blew up. There are always people that are really upset with what I have to say and throw in some nasty comments. So, I try to tune those out as best I can. Sometimes it's hard to ignore, but always the people that leave the positive stuff always kind of brighten it all at the end.
Now you have to ignore the bad comments, but also how do you walk away from content creation when you're done, or have you been able to fully do that? One of the struggles with me is I have a full-time job. I do this on the side. When I am at my full-time job, I'm focused, but then it's time to turn that off, work on this. And then oftentimes that's at night. I get worked up personally, and then it's hard for me to fall asleep, right? Because you're so much interaction with the screen and being on the laptop, and it's not always the best for you. So how are you able to disconnect, or are you able to disconnect from all this content creation?
It's a challenge. I have the same problem, man. Sometimes I'm good about it, but then there's some days where like I'm so warped into like thinking of new ideas or looking at the analytics and all that, how the video is doing. And I'm just like, constantly like feeding my brain all this activity that I just need to like distance myself for a bit on. So, when I'm responsible about it, before I go to bed, I'll read a book and leave my phone in another room. That's usually the best way if I'm just trying to fall asleep. But sometimes it's hard to, get your mind out of that loop at times. And that's, I guess, the one drawback from this is although I can work whenever I want to, I also sometimes feel guilty when I'm not working and I'm thinking about something else or enjoying something else. But sometimes you just have to disconnect, because if you don't, then you'll just burn yourself out. You're not going to enjoy the process as much. And you just need to appreciate life once in a while instead of always, being warped in content creation. As fun as it is, sometimes you just need to take a small break and step back.
This is an interesting question I'm going to ask you because I know my answer, but do you feel like sometimes when you're vlogging, you go to a match in Portugal or wherever you are, right? I've seen you traveling in Europe. Can you truly enjoy the experience while you're vlogging? I think a lot of people are saying, especially boomers or whoever they are, put your phone down, put your camera down, enjoy the moment. I personally think sometimes when I'm vlogging, my senses and like I'm more in the moment, it's more heightened. I'm paying attention to everything. I'm scanning. I think sometimes I'm more into it when I'm actually vlogging than when I'm not. What do you feel about that?
I'm mixed about it. I totally understand what you're saying. Sometimes I feel that way as well, but not vlogging it and just, soaking in the atmosphere is also something special. And that's something about, what we're talking about, disconnecting. When you're not worried about filming this, making sure this looks good content wise and all that, if you're just like, this applies to anything you're doing in life. If you're like going to these events or moments where you gotta just like soak in the atmosphere and appreciate it, sometimes you enjoy it more. And I have gone to football matches where I just haven't recorded, and it was obviously a different experience. I wouldn't say it was necessarily better, but I definitely had more, in-head moments of just being like, wow, it is so awesome to be here. Because I'm just appreciating the moment more instead of like worrying if I got that shot and if I got this guy's reaction and all that, and also socializing with other people in public as well. I mean, sometimes I just want to like, talk to the person I meet next to me instead of like making sure I record how he's feeling about this moment. I also feel a bit bad about the people around me. That's just like me in my head, but yeah.
I don't know if unless you're guys like Bald and Bankrupt, which I know who we both watch.
I love that guy.
One of the best vloggers on YouTube, in my opinion. It seems like he really has gotten over feeling bad or getting in his head about what other people think when he's vlogging. It's hard to. I think you have to do it all the time consistently to get into that mindset. Has there ever been a match, or a time where you just kind of sat back and really thought, I'm living the dream. I'm living my dream. Like a moment that really hit you? If there's
like while recording or just in general?
Yeah, like just from the travels, whether it's in Croatia, whether it's at the World Cup, a certain place in time where you've realized I've created this. I'm living my best life right now.
I would say the World Cup for sure. The last World Cup. I mean, actually, it's hard to say in terms of like, those like recording moments, like, oh my God, this is sick that I get to do this as my job. The last World Cup definitely had those mini spurts of like realization. But I think like the most euphoric feeling I've ever had at a match was the Russia World Cup when Croatia played Argentina.
Okay.
I've never been like at an all-time high like throughout the match. It was just so insane for me to see. Because even though Argentina weren't looking great that World Cup, still in the back of my head, I was like, oh, I'm just gonna watch Messi dominate Croatia. Like once the match started, I was like, oh, it could be a good game, but I don't know what's gonna happen. And then Croatia just obliterated them, and it was like Luka Modric's goal. I recorded that on camera, but I'll still never forget when it happened.
Were you vlogging for that specific match, or were you just there to enjoy?
I was vlogging, but back then I wasn't like, that was my first time vlogging, first of all, and second of all, the channel wasn't that big then, so it was not the most well done vlog. I just kind of like recorded me going to the match and then the match itself, and that was it.
So let's talk about 2026 and the next couple of years, right? Obviously, the World Cup's coming stateside, Canada, Mexico. What do you envision for HRV Izak? What your channel going over the next 3 years? Like, I know you talk about maybe if you feel like sometimes your content, in your words, you need to spice it up a little bit, right? Like, do you have any plans? Like, where do you see your channel going? What do you really enjoy? Yeah,
so I think in general, in terms of like the process of by the time the next World Cup rolls around, I think this is just a general rule of thumb for like every YouTuber. And I've seen it for like all the successful ones as well. you just need to stay evolving your content. If you keep producing the same stuff, it's not even just like in terms of the production and editing and all that. If you're like making the same exact videos for a long time, not only does it get stale for you, but it does for, I guess, other people as well. It just, you don't feel as like passionate about it, and then your fans kind of lose interest as well. And I feel like I'm kind of at that stage right now where I need to change something up. I'm enjoying what I'm doing still. I love it for sure, but I want to add some more, I guess, spice, some other like type of content to kind of like diversify my flow and, keep me like interested because, I feel like we said earlier, in terms of like thinking of ideas for shorts, I feel like I'm kind of bouncing off the same ideas. I want to start thinking of some other stuff. So I'm hoping to have a more, diverse pool of content by then. Obviously, for now, I'm hoping to still talk about football as well, but maybe start diving into more underrated national teams or clubs and all that. Definitely something needs to kind of like change a bit. I'm hoping to find that as this year goes on.
Mhm. It's always tough, though, to find that and to continue doing what you're doing at the same time. I don't think people realize that there's only a finite amount of time in the day, and to be thinking ahead while also thinking on the present can be a challenge.
Yeah, it can get mentally exhausting. And I mean, even with these shorts that I've been doing, I sit down for so long thinking of ideas, but then in my head, I'm like, oh, I also need to think of all these other new ideas. But I'm so warped into what I've already been doing that I lose track of time. And there you go. That's my day already doing the older stuff as well.
Couple last questions, kind of more big picture stuff. You traveled a lot of the world to, especially Europe, in terms of football. Is there any other location that is your dream to go to? Any city, any specific match? Like, what's the ultimate match day vlog, or just to go to a game and enjoy?
In just, are you talking about not in Europe, like anywhere else?
Anywhere in the world. Yeah, anywhere in the world or in Europe.
Oh, also in Europe.
Somewhere where you can expect HRV Izak to travel to in the next 5 years, let's say, on the channel.
Ooh. Oh, that's such a good question.
Something your fans can look forward to.
In my head, I said I wanted to kind of record some more experiences like in Balkan countries, like maybe some derbies there.
Yeah.
So I'm still potentially hoping for that. I mean, I was just in the Hajduk Split Dinamo Zagreb match. But I'm hoping to go to even more, like to other Balkan countries as well. In terms of, I mean, I've also dreamed of going to like some of the big fixtures, of course, like El Clasico. But I also kind of want to focus on the stuff that's not like extremely mainstream. I don't know where it will entail, and I haven't fully planned it yet. But I do want to visit Asia next year, like in exactly a year from now.
You're kind of painting almost bald and bankrupt like vibes, soccer content creator style. Like the less traversed areas where there's big clubs, big leagues, big teams, big derbies, but maybe the more or less well known.
Yeah, because there's so much football all around the world. And just because it's not like the top players in the top leagues doesn't mean it's not interesting. There's so much backstory to the clubs, the fans. So I want to dive into that stuff more and explore maybe all across the world, not even just Europe. Like I said, I was thinking Asia. I haven't been to South America yet. I have no plans for that yet, but that would be awesome as well. So there's just so much to see, man. That's the beauty of life. There's so much to do and soak in.
Last thing, because you do the predictions, I do want to get one bold prediction from you.
All right.
We're a couple years out, obviously. The 2026 World Cup. Let's just say, who's going to shock the world? What nation do you think in a couple of years will shock the world if you had to pick one?
Oh, I can't be biased and say Croatia because I guess they have been shocking recently. Oh, that's tough. I mean, we don't even know who qualified yet, but you know what? Maybe I'm getting too ahead of myself, but I don't care. Venezuela have been impressing a lot in these qualifiers. If they keep it up, maybe they can do big things at the World Cup because that would be their first World Cup, their debut. I mean, if they can get out of the group stage in that, they're playing like they could. So I would love to see it. And they actually have a really impressive young generation. So by then they could be a lot more developed, fully fit. We'll see.
I just feel like I was watching one of your videos there for a second. That last 10 seconds, you got into character right away. And it's been great talking with you, Izak. Thanks a lot for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Of course. Thanks, man. Take care.
You too.